Hi and welcome to the Watchman Update, where we bring perspective to the news from a biblical viewpoint, offering the biblical standard on current events, focusing on prophecy, moral and social issues. And in this episode, we explore prophecy and the press, Iran's revolutionary woes.
The Lampstand Magazine article on the Watchman entitled Prophecy and the Press. On the 28th of December 2025, protests erupted in Tehran, Iran's capital city. They followed a year of economic freefall and spiralling, a devaluation of the Iranian currency, which had lost more than 40% of its value since Israel's 12-day conflict with Iran in June 2025. Those losses were just the latest in a prolonged collapse that had erased nearly 90% of the currency's value since the United States quit the nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran in 2018. The protests spread quickly across the country and evolved into some of the most serious challenge to the Islamic Republic since the Woman Life Freedom movement of 2022 and 23. And previously, the 2009 Iranian presidential election protests. These protests have taken place amid the prospect of foreign intervention as Israel threatened to renew strikes on Iran, and the United States demonstrated its readiness to take decisive action with its capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on the 3rd of January 2026. By early January, protests had erupted across all 31 provinces in Iran. Within weeks, the protests were suppressed, following a brutal crackdown that began on the 19th of January. From a prophetic perspective based on Ezekiel 38, Iran will support Russia's invasion of Israel. This suggests that whatever the outcome of these protests will be, at the time of that invasion, Iran will still remain loyal to Russia and will continue its antagonism toward Israel. What has been Russia's response? Foreign policy reports Moscow is doing what it has done repeatedly over the past 2 decades when authoritarian partners face internal threats, reinforcing the tools of repression, sharing lessons from its own experience managing dissent, and insulating the regime from external pressure. Publicly, the Kremlin has defaulted to familiar language by condemning foreign interference, warning against destabilization, and affirming respect for Iranian sovereignty. Privately, however, its role is far more consequential. Moscow continues to provide the key military equipment and sophisticated internet suppression technology that the Iranian regime is using today. Russia's most consequential contribution lies in how the regime controls the information environment once unrest reaches national scale. The ongoing internet shutdown, which began on the 8th of January, is unprecedented, not because Iran cut connectivity, but because it demonstrated a shift from blunt censorship to managed connectivity. Mobile networks and international access were severed, while government platforms, banking services, and approved domestic infrastructure remained online. Society was digitally immobilized, while the state retained command and control. This asymmetric outcome reflects a model that Russia has spent years refining at home: repression that disrupts mobilization without weakening the regime's own capacity to govern. Moscow will not send troops to patrol Iranian streets or mount a direct military intervention to save the regime. Such a move would be costly. It would escalate international scrutiny and risk trapping Russia in an open-ended commitment reminiscent of Syria, an outcome the Kremlin is determined to avoid. Just as importantly, overt intervention would likely weaken Tehran rather than stabilize it, casting the regime as dependent on foreign force and potentially inflaming nationalist sentiment at precisely the moment the state is seeking to project control. Instead, Russia will continue to do what it has proved capable of doing, enabling the regime to save itself. This means discreet but sustained support designed to reinforce the Islamic Republic's coercive capacity while preserving plausible deniability. Phase 2 of Trump's Gaza peace plan has now commenced. Prophecy in the press regarding Israel and Gaza. Phase 2 of Trump's Gaza peace plan has now commenced, according to a White House press release, with the establishment of an official international organization known as the Board of Peace. It will be chaired by President Trump, with a charter that seeks to promote stability, restore dependable and lawful governance, and secure enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. The body is set to supervise a transitional Palestinian technocratic government in the Gaza Strip, called the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, that is headed by Eli Sha'ath, a former Palestinian Authority official who was born in the Gaza Strip. The Board of Peace will also work toward disarming Hamas and deploying the International Stabilization Force, a peacekeeping mission made up of international armed personnel, and charged with the training of a new Palestinian police force. The White House has picked up Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, as well as former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, as members of the initiative's founding executive board. As of the 22nd of January 2026, some 35 countries have signed up to join the board. According to the Russian state-owned news agency, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on the 21st of January, during a meeting with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the Kremlin, that he will accept President Donald Trump's invitation to join the Board of Peace and meet the $1 billion requirement. Putin made clear that he was joining the Board of Peace to secure the Palestinian interests, and that he will pay the $1 billion first and foremost to support the Palestinian people and to direct those funds to the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and in general to resolve Palestinian problems. Prophecy in the press regarding Europe and America. There has been a consistent reporting of tension between Europe and America over President Trump's posturing over Greenland. Here are some of the selected headlines. CNN, Trump's posturing over Greenland has changed the transatlantic alliance forever, European officials say. Reuters says Greenland scare makes Europe confront US-free NATO. The BBC, the EU suspends approval of a US trade deal. Politico, Trump's Greenland threats push Europe toward divorcing America. The Conversation, Trump's Greenland ambitions could wreck 20th century alliances that helped build the modern world order. Axios, EU chief warns there's no going back after Trump's Greenland threats. Trust between Europe and the US took a beating when the US peace plan for Ukraine emerged that favored Russia. Then, the White House new security strategy in December targeted European allies, while taking a soft line on the West's main adversaries, Russia and China. Trump then threatened to impose 10% tariffs on exports from Denmark and 5 other EU states, plus the UK and Norway, if they didn't support his takeover of Greenland. Whilst he later withdrew those threats, this action sparked the biggest crisis in the transatlantic relationship for a decade, so much so that the European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen dramatically called for permanent independence from the US and vowed to be unflinching in the face of President Trump's pressure campaign to snatch Greenland. From a prophetic perspective based on Ezekiel 38, Europe will ally itself with Russia, whilst the US, as one of the young lions, will oppose the invasion. This suggests an ultimate break in relations between the US and Europe. Trump's unpredictability only serves to promote this rupture. Prophecy in the press regarding Russia and Ukraine. The following information has been extracted from the Harvard publication Russia Matters. Russia is waging a campaign to freeze Ukraine into political submission by systematically degrading its energy system, according to David Ignatius's column in the Washington Post. The Kremlin has shifted from trying to crash the entire grid to isolating key hubs, Kyiv, Odessa, with the drone and missile strikes about every 2 weeks that repeatedly hit freshly repaired infrastructure, keeping these cities dark and cold for days, according to Andrew Kramer and his New York Times co-authors. One recent barrage severed Kyiv from the national grid, knocking out 3 of its gas and coal-fired plants and left hundreds of apartment buildings without heat and temperatures falling as low as minus 18 degrees Celsius, while the capital survived on less than a tenth of its usual 2,000 megawatt demand. Nationwide, there is not a single power plant left in Ukraine that has not been attacked, with 612 strikes on energy facilities over the past year, according to the Ukrainian Minister of Energy. Aid officials describe this as the hardest winter of the year, and Putin is betting that he can break Ukraine through his energy terror, Miller writes in the Financial Times. The 20th of January update in Russian Matters analysis for the past 4 weeks indicates that the Russian forces gained 63 square miles of Ukrainian territory in that period, a decrease over the 139 square miles it gained over the previous 4-week period. This month has also seen France claim that it has come to supply 2/3 of Ukraine's battlefield intelligence. In terms of military casualties, Russia has 1.1 million casualties, according to ex-CIA director, with 84,500 or more missing, whereas Ukraine has 400,000 killed or injured, with an estimated 35,000 missing, estimated by President Donald Trump. Russia's 2026 geopolitical ambitions center on restoring great power status, enforcing a multipolar world order to counter Western hegemony and re-establish a sphere of influence over former Soviet territories. Key goals include securing victory in Ukraine, dominating the Black Sea, expanding Arctic influence, and deepening strategic partnerships with China, India, and the global South. Russia promotes a post-Western, multipolar world using the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, as a financial alternative to the US dollar and Western regulations. It seeks to foster an axis of resistance with allies to defy the Western influence. The global think tank, RUSI, reports on Russia's likely moves in 2026. Since retreating from Kyiv in April 2022, Russia has now failed in 4 of its 5 strategic objectives: political subjugation, economic sustainability, regime stability, and international standing. Only in territorial control does it hold an advantage. But a declining power is often more dangerous than a rising one. Facing an economic spiral and depleted conventional forces, Vladimir Putin is entering a window of maximum danger. We must prepare not for a resurgent Russia, but for a desperate one. 2026 will be the year of a hybrid escalation which the UK's Foreign Secretary in December 2025, on the 11th anniversary of Locarno, boldly stated was already flagrantly visible. Russia must demonstrate to its domestic audience and to the West that it retains the initiative and remains a great power. Next year, it will manifest across 3 specific hybrid warfare pillars. Firstly, sabotage will target Europe's expanding defense production infrastructure and Ukraine-bound supply chains. As continental ammunition factories ramp up and logistics networks become more visible, they become prime targets. like last year's arms factory explosion in Romania. Expect attacks designed to delay weapons deliveries, drive up security costs, and force governments to divert resources from Ukraine support to domestic protection. Secondly, subversion, especially information warfare as seen in Moldova, will intensify dramatically during key European elections, including in Hungary, early 2026, and the US midterms. Pro-Russian populist parties already top polls across major European capitals. Every percentage point, every political message amplified to their advantage offers Russia hope of weakening sanctions and Western political resolve. And thirdly, coercion. Through conventional military demonstrations, it will escalate from sporadic to systematic. Expect increasingly aggressive airspace and naval violations, like this year's 12-minute reckless Gulf of Finland incident, plus nuclear rhetoric, calibrated to create psychological pressure. The intended message? Supporting Ukraine risks direct escalation with Russia, so perhaps restraint is wiser. From a prophetic perspective, we expect that Russia and Europe will unite in their common goal of invading Israel. At present, tensions between Russia and Europe are high, and the forecast of more hybrid warfare from Russia will only serve to heighten that tension. At some point, we expect turnaround in relations between the two. Perhaps this year we may see a resolution to the Ukrainian conflict and a softening stance by Europe toward Russia. We will have to wait and see. In the meantime, it is time for us to lift up our heads because our redemption draws nigh. Prophecy in the press regarding Israel's recognition of Somaliland. This was a surprise announcement on December the 26th that Israel will be the first country to grant Somaliland full recognition, and it has ignited new dynamics at the Red Sea Basin. As part of the agreement, Israel will establish a diplomatic presence and possible security presence in the area for the first time, since relations with Eritrea broke down in 2020. Normalizations of relations with Israel may open opportunities for bilateral cooperation in many spheres, including intelligence sharing and access to naval and air bases. Notably, Somaliland has allocated only a minimal budget to its small military throughout its existence. An ambitious program for Israeli civilian aid in water management, agricultural modernization, and information technologies is also being planned, and a large delegation is expected in Israel soon. Jerusalem was forced to seek allies with access to the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea after the Yemeni Houthis began a concerted attack campaign on October the 19th, 2023, targeting ships bound for Israel, launching missile and drone strikes on Israeli soil. Theoretically, Somaliland's 850 kilometers of coastline across from Yemen could offer certain advantages to the Israel Defense Forces, who have mounted a series of massive airstrikes and occasional naval strikes against the Houthis. Although the Israeli Defense Force does not want to base in Somaliland, it does seek access rights when needed, as well as intelligence facilities to monitor the Houthis. Israel planners assume that confrontations with the Houthis will resume if fighting erupts with Israel or Hamas. Crucially, the port of Eilat, Israel's only outlet to the Red Sea, has drastically reduced operations, and Jerusalem will not tolerate this state of affairs indefinitely, says the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. It will be interesting to see if Israel uses Somaliland as a base of operations against the Houthis. From a prophetic perspective, the Sheba of Ezekiel 38 verse 13 is Yemen, and will eventually be allied to Saudi Arabia in its protests against Gog's invasion.
Thanks for staying with us for this report. We pray that the video report has provided some clarity to the situation in the Middle East. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and select all so you never miss a new upload. Don't forget to like, share and drop a comment in the comment section. We love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you follow our playlist and never miss a new report. Until next time, God willing, this has been the Watchman Report, bringing perspective to current world news from a biblical standpoint. Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you thought. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share it and spread the word. Thanks for watching, and remember to come back soon.